I'm Angel, and I want to talk about autistic burnout. I know you didn't see that one coming, did you? I recently realized that I'm autistic. I'm 51 years old, and I realized this after what I now would call a series of pretty major burnouts, meltdowns, escalating dysfunction in my life. And Today is June 11th, and I only realized that I am autistic on May 1st of this year, even though, of course, in that realization, I could look back through my whole life and see evidence of that. So I'm still very much processing this realization, so thank you for bearing with me. Sharing because in this processing, I have run into a lot of questions and answers by other people, both people who are autistic and people who aren't autistic but who interact with generally who love people who are autistic, either their parents or children or lovers or teachers or students. Um, and I and I think it's beautiful that we are collectively coming to a better understanding of each other and more acceptance of ourselves and each other. And so my aim with this stammering is to add to that collective endeavor. All that out of the way, I want to talk about autistic burnout because, as I mentioned, I feel like my own burnout has been in many ways the trigger for this epiphany. And sometimes I wish that I had this knowledge a lot earlier and wonder how much it would have helped me avoid so much of this burnout. Um, I'm aware, though, that like a lot of the terminology in science about women with autism and about burnout is really new in the last 5 years or so. And so, being born in 1971, there's a good chance if I had been diagnosed earlier that it would not have served me very well. So, um, I guess that's a little pinky finger asterisk, as I call it these days. I've been weeping a lot today, so that's part of why I'm a little bit sniffly. And that has been one of the signs of autistic meltdown for me. I kind of always just thought it was something that was part of my life. From a young age, I've been very sensitive and tended to cry easily anytime somebody was yelling or um, when I felt frustrated or um, at some points in my life, seemingly almost for every all or no reason. And when I was younger, I think it was pretty easy to put in a context of being young. And then when I was a teenager, it was being a teenager. And then when I was becoming a young mother, it was postpartum depression and identity of becoming a mother. And through all that, I had chronic autoimmune stuff. I was incarcerated as a youth. There's lots of evidence. Again, now with hindsight, I can look back and see um, many points of autistic rage, many points of meltdown. Um, and so today I find myself at age 51, weeping a lot of the day, trying to take this new knowledge into my future potential life in a way that best serves me and best serves humanity. And and I run up against the question of how do you get better once you've melted down, once you've lost so much function. I lost function in my arms almost exactly a year ago after pushing myself in a job and in a relationship that was not a good match for me. not, there were parts of it that were an excellent match for me, which is why I was pushing myself. But knowing what I know now, I can see how there were many other parts that were not such a good match. One of those being that I'm pretty sure that my partner slash boss slash housemate slash lover is also autistic and doesn't know it, or maybe he does know it and has never talked about it with me. But and also I believe that's true of my mother. So taking all that into account, if I look at my relationships with the people I've loved the most through this lens, it's helpful to see how I have melted down at times and how my partner or my mother has at times shut down. I think both of them tend toward that more shutdown, which I've experienced at times, but I'm more of a melter downer. So I tend to cry, weep, sometimes yell. I don't think of myself as a yeller at all, but I just last night with bandmates was intensely speaking my perspective to such a degree that one of my newer younger bandmates left this scenario and then came back and said that he doesn't like negativity. And I recognize, because I'm practiced at picking up social clues, even though it does not come naturally to me, I realized that he was most likely talking about me, and most likely, that was him expressing his desire for me to not let my energy be so elevated, which to him is perceived as negative. And indeed, I would say, to be fair, that it probably, if you just had to rate it as the AI does these days of negative or positive in a binary way, it was definitely negative. Um, and that's an interesting thing for me to contemplate. I have this very backwards way of doing things often, which I think is common in people with autism, who are autistic. I think I like that phrase better. Anyhow, I often, come around to things the backwards way, is all I was trying to get at there. I lost my train of thought. I want to come back to meltdowns and the question of the day: how do you get better if you've lost? So I lost function of my arms, and how I got better was to stop doing stuff, to totally change my entire life and give up the identity of myself being a body worker, myself being a builder, myself being a functional contributing person. Clearly I'm still grappling with it a little. And as I mentioned, I also have been weepy off and on today, and recognize that part of the meltdown aspect for me is that when I'm hormonal, when I'm near what I call my threshold of overwhelm, just from taking in a lot of data, it doesn't have to be negative data. In fact, positive can be almost more overwhelming than negative in many ways, because I have like a guard mechanism to negative. Positive, I tend to let in. And when my sensory equipment becomes overloaded, then I tend to get emotional, like you just saw there, and sometimes tear up. And some people find that very disconcerting and get really uncomfortable around it. And in fact, start accusing. I've been accused of being passive aggressive, accused of being emotionally manipulative. And the problem is, if it's responded to in a negative way, like with retreat, then it tends to cause more of that in me, which can create like this negative spiral into the pit of despair, as I sometimes call it. Part of what I'm gathering as I've asked this question, and I'm searching the internet for answers from other people who've asked this question, or people who've researched people asking this question, which I found some of from just the last 5 years, all from women, interestingly. Women with autism, kind of a new category in the psychology world mindset. So all that is fascinating to me. One of my special interests, me, myself, and I, and also humans. Um, yeah, I have many, many special, what would we call special interests, because I go real deep into them, much more intensely than most people I know. Um, on the topic of what do we do when we've had a meltdown, or how, so I guess let me pinky finger asterisk throw in a little tangent or clarifier here and say what I was talking about a minute ago about or 2 minutes ago about becoming emotional and having, like, let's call that a mini meltdown for lack of a better term in the here and now. I think I frequently have mini meltdowns, and that's sort of just part of how I am. I'm a sensitive, extreme kind of a person, I've come to know. I'm also a very stable, calm, low key. I'm, I'm a basket of dichotomies. This conclusion I came to about myself very early in my life. I remember writing about it in grade school. But anyway, um, I want to make the distinction between mini meltdowns and like a complete shutdown, a regression, as it's sometimes been called, an autistic regression, a loss of function. Now, a mini meltdown is a loss of function. It's a loss of emotional regulation, a loss of ability to speak sometimes, a loss of ability to control myself. But that's different from this, like, let's call it a mega meltdown that has happened a few times in my life, where I have just, in this latest time being the most profound. I am in perimenopause, so there's a hormonal aspect. I lost use of my arms. I lost all my close relationships. The last few, there were only a couple remaining ones in my life, like threads of them, and they just were completely obliterated. I lost my ability to work, to make money, to manage money. I stopped opening my mail. Just sit and weep a lot. That's not very functional. So that is a version, and I've had a few different ones of what I would call a mega meltdown. And what to do for that? My answer that I've come to lately is Qigong, Tai Chi, structured, de-stressing, structured but loose. So Qigong or Tai Chi, a martial artist study, which I've undertaken before and gotten pretty far along in, and I feel called to return to, for that's a way that can help me and can help others. And breathing exercises, meditation, refocusing, reframing, a lot of neuro-linguistic programming kind of stuff, but through the lens of I am autistic, and so I need to treat myself like an infant with kid gloves, so to speak, very gently, very tenderly, very forgivingly. These are resonant with many words that I've heard from other people as I've embarked in this journey to try to figure out this latest bit of the puzzle that is me. Um, yeah, I hope that any of that is helpful. I'm sharing just in the moment, because it helps me, and so I thank you for being a part of that. I welcome your questions and comments and experiences and thoughts and input. If you have any tips for self-regulation, for coming back after mini or mega meltdowns, for autistic people and non-autistic people. I think we all do sometimes reach that threshold of overwhelm. I think it's an interesting topic of discussion, the differences for autistic people and what's called neurotypical people. And I think those distinctions get gray on the edges. So I think it's a conversation worth having for all of us, how to manage ourselves better so we don't spill over that threshold, and also how to pick ourselves back up and rise again like the mighty phoenixes that we are once we have burned up and fallen to ashes, which I've done a number of times. And I'm happy to say I'm just in the process of rising again, my friend. So again, I thank you. I welcome you. I love you, and I encourage you love yourself, to enjoy being yourself, however you are, whoever you are. You're a worthy, tiny, shiny speck of life, as worthy as every other tiny, shiny speck of life. So, yeah, give yourself a little more love, a little pat on the back, and permission to forgive yourself, to enjoy being you.